So this episode's starting off with us seeing All For One's backstory, finally. And it's not only revealing a lot about him, it's also revealing a lot about the history of the My Hero Academia world, such as where quirks came from. So in the first episode of the series, we're told that the first quirk started with a glowing baby in China. Well, it turns out after all this time, that wasn't true. They were too hasty in those reports. It turns out that he was just the first registered quirk user. It's kind of ambiguous, I suppose, who was patient zero with quirks, because All For One says that it's reported that even 2 weeks before the glowing baby, there was like 50 people in India that had quirks. And on top of that, we're seeing All For One's mother at the beginning of this episode. And it's even possible that she was the first person to have a quirk, which was like the drill spike quirk thing. And there's more to All For One's mother and what happens to her in the manga. And I'll make a separate video about this later, about the origin of quirks and, you know, their future and everything. But she's like just a homeless lady, and she gave birth to All For One and his brother Yoichi in some alley somewhere. And we see that All For One in the womb was like siphoning the nutrients from Yoichi. So that's why he was like big and more developed, and Yoichi was all small and scrawny. Also, a really interesting thing here is that All For One, of course, is born with the All For One quirk. He kind of just got lucky and had the best quirk ever. But his brother Yoichi has One For All, which is eventually it's called that, but at first he doesn't even know that he has the quirk. Neither of them do, I suppose. But his quirk is just the ability to give quirks, as for All For One has the ability to take and give. And he says that due to the malnutrition in the womb, and I guess being born afterwards, his quirk factor never fully developed, which makes me think that Yoichi was also supposed to have the same quirk as All For One, except he just wasn't able to mature the taking aspect of it, and he more so just got the giving, which is essentially a useless quirk since there's nothing he can give. That is until All For One forcibly gives him the power stockpiler quirk in an effort to make him stronger. And then those two quirk factors fused together and made the One For All quirk. And we're also seeing the origin for the terms All For One and One For All. It comes from this comic book that All For One and Yoichi were reading as kids. This is also like foreshadowing as to what's going to come with All Might versus All For One, because we see on the cover the hero of the story looks just like All Might, and the villain is like the Demon Lord, which is what All For One refers to himself as. This is why. It's because of the comic that he read. And one of the things that they say in the comic is All For One and One For All, which is where the names for the quirks were coined as well. We're also seeing that All For One was just a psychopath from the get-go. He was just born that way, and he felt that everything belonged to him, including Yoichi. So that's why he kind of kept Yoichi alive, and in some weird, twisted way, cares for him, although, you know, it's not altruistic at all. It's just because he's a possession and, like, the only family that he has. All For One also winds up finding out that the glowing baby started, like, their own resistance and was kind of, like, became a mascot for it since they were known as the first quirk user. And All For One just winds up killing all of them, including the glowing baby, and then just takes his quirk just because. So that's why he's glowing when he's fighting against All Might, because it's just the glowing baby's quirk coming through, and there's no real power to it other than, I guess, you just glow. We're also seeing the moment where the second and third users find Yoichi, Kudo, and Bruce. They're members of Resistance as well, and they're trying to take down All For One, and they just happen to find Yoichi in prison. This leads to them having a friendship, of course, which makes All For One very jealous. And while he was chasing them down one day, he like impulsively winds up killing Yoichi. Although, you know, he later regrets it, of course, although he doesn't really care ultimately. It's more so just another possession that he lost. We also see that he wound up keeping Yoichi's hand, you know, after he had killed him with, I guess, the air expulsion quirk or whatever. And of course, this is supposed to mirror to what he winds up doing to Shigaraki, manipulating and grooming him with his deceased family members' hands. It all started with him. And also, we're seeing that All For One as a child is supposed to mirror Shigaraki's origin as a child as well, after he accidentally kills his family. They both kind of wandered around the same way, although All For One wasn't really looking for anyone to save him the way that Shigaraki was. Hey, also guys, if you've been liking my Hero episode breakdowns, please subscribe. I know a lot of you watch my videos through the browse feature or suggest or whatever, and that's fine. I get it. I do that a lot myself. But I am going to be covering the series for the rest of the year, and then I'm going to be making follow-up content to it as well. So if you're interested in that, subscribe. And, you know, like the video too. It'll boost it on the algorithm, hopefully. Thank you. Then after this sequence, we find out that One For All has like fully manifested. And I guess it's implied that the way that he transferred One For All to Kudo was via his blood splattering on him after All For One had killed him. Because you have to ingest the DNA of the person who has One For All and then for willingly to transfer it to you. So I guess this all happened in a matter of seconds. And it's found out after the fact when Bruce is analyzing Kudo's DNA that he now has two quirk factors. The one that he originally had, which is Gear Shift, and then we see the little one next to it, which is One For All. And I guess one way or another they figure out how this works, and it's from that point on where it transfers from one user to another until it eventually gets to All Might. We're also finally seeing the moment where All Might initially defeats All For One. This is like the big epic fight that they had 7 years before the start of the series, where All Might thought that he had straight up killed All For One, and he essentially did. But by chance, Dr. Yujiko was able to get All For One's body from the morgue or whatever and then revived him. And also, it's being further confirmed in this episode that Kudo is not related to Bakugo because All For One like killed all of Kudo's family and everyone that was just in the vicinity of him. So there's no way that Kudo's blood could have reached Bakugo. It's more so he's just spiritually living through Bakugo and just aesthetically resembles him. It's more so just the anime trope of like history repeating itself and there's supposed to be this destiny or whatever. How some characters from the present look like characters from the past. You know, we've seen it in Naruto, we're seeing it in One Piece. But we're coming back to All For One taking on Bakugo here. And All For One's like freaking out because obviously he's rewinding super fast and he's running out of time to be able to take over Shigaraki. So in his last ditch effort, he activates like a bunch of quirks at once and becomes this massive meat missile thing. It's so big it's taking up multiple city blocks. And this is an effort to like launch himself desperately at Shigaraki. And Bakugo's like, nah. And as All For One is shooting himself there, suddenly there's all these explosions in his mouth. And it turns out that in the previous sequence in the last episode, Bakugo had snuck some of his sweat droplets inside of All For One's mouth and then delayed the explosion until this point, which is able to stifle All For One. And Bakugo hits him with a howitzer impact, which is like one of my favorite moves in this series. I love it so much. Bakugo only does it like 3 or 4 times, to be honest. But I guess that's more than enough because it should be used for like special occasions like this. Then we're seeing that due to the damage that All For One has been taking and him regressing in age and everything, his quirk factors are no longer really listening to him. I mean, it also goes into what Star and Stripe had did by damaging them in the first place. But then I guess they're also just fighting back on their own, as we see, you know, manifested through Hawks, because he had taken his quirk factor in the previous season. And as All For One is like struggling to fight back here, he keeps saying that like, this is my story, and Bakugo's like, nah, this is actually our story. And you know, further continuing the full-blown character arc of Bakugo here, fully accepting that he is not the main character, you know, Bakugo himself, that not everybody else is an extra or a background character. They all work together throughout the series to come to this moment to where Bakugo can defeat All For One. And we see this incredible sequence where Bakugo just winds up smashing All For One in the face with a huge explosion. And of course, this is supposed to mirror the sequence of All Might taking down All For One with the United States of Smash in Season 3. Then after this, All For One is literally regressed to a baby. And as he's desperately crawling to try to make one last stand against Shigaraki, he says, I want everyone to always look at me. This is also supposed to parallel to Toya's backstory. Toya was another hatred vessel that All For One manipulated as a child as well. Then in one last ditch effort, he fires like a spike from his mouth at Bakugo, but Bakugo catches it with his own mouth and then breaks it, and that's more than enough for All For One to finally regress into like a fetus and then into nothingness. So yes, Bakugo has defeated All For One. And I like that Bakugo does raise his left arm because of course that's supposed to parallel to what All Might does after he wins. And unfortunately, Bakugo's not able to stay standing the way that All Might was because, you know, Bakugo always wanted to surpass All Might. But he's accepted that that's not what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to do what he's doing right here. And that's where the episode ends. This was incredible. One of the best episodes in the series. I really enjoyed this one. There was some stuff I missed for sure. And like I said, I'm going to make a follow-up video to this. Hopefully this week I can get something out. But let me know what you think about this in the comments, guys. If you liked it, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.